This video will show how you can use a number of different alpha controls and methods to create what looks like a list of selected names, all coming from a filtered drop-down box, and the filter is based on some input. So you can so we've got this empty looking input box right now, and you can type in a letter, and your drop-down list will filter based on that letter. So I'm just going to select one, and that's a contains or a like filter coming from a SQL filter. So I'm going to type another letter, T. I'll do one more, S. And so we're just building up a list as we go along, and then we can delete items in this list as well, and then we can continue to add. So let's go and have a look to see how we did this. So this is our UX component. There's not a lot going on in here. There's a static text control. There's a window container, which contains our drop-down list, because we only want to show this after we've typed in something into our static text. Now, we're not really typing anything into the static text box, because of course it doesn't take any input. So let's look at the events that we're using. Let's look at client side first. So on the client side on render, I'm setting up some HTML. It's an input type text box. I've given it an ID and I've styled it a little bit. There's not much styling going on here. And then we're taking our select list, which is our static control, static text control, and we're setting the inner HTML to this HTML. So that's how we wind up with an input text box in our static text control. What we'll look at next is what happens when we type a value into our static text control. So I'm just going to go down to the onKeyUp event for the static text control, and what we're doing is we're grabbing the value from our input text box, which has an ID of TB text. Then we're doing an AJAX callback to get our values from our table based on that filter. So we're passing in the filter information here, and we're calling an AJAX callback called populate dropdown, and then we're popping up the container window. We're showing that. So let's go and have a look at the XBasic function now. So here's our full XBasic function, and this is kind of standard stuff taken from a number of Selwyn's different videos. We're just going to grab the I'm going to create a SQL statement, and then we're going to filter it here. I'm going to include a like clause in there, and then we're just going to execute it, and we come back down here, and we put together the information that's coming back from the record set, and then we just push it back into the drop-down box. Now, what happens in the drop-down box? Let's go and have a look at that. So in the onClick event of the drop-down box, we've got this. So we go and we get our table. Just a minute. So what we're doing here is we're testing to see if we've set up a table, because we're going to be using a table for this for the static text box. So we go ahead and we look for our ID called TB_table. If TB_table is null, that means we haven't set up a table yet. So in that case, we're going to set up a string of HTML, which gives us a table ID. I'll just go over here. We're setting up alignment, cell spacing, and we're setting up, there's a break in there, and then we're also including additional information for our input box as well. So we're setting up another input box as a second line. And then so this occurs if for the first time if our table is null. So we just grab our table and we set up our select statement as we need it. And so now we've got a table going with no rows in it and an input box as just sitting underneath it. And we know that we're just setting our TP text value back to nothing to clear out that entry. We're hiding our container window because we've already done a selection. And then we're going to append this value, and this value is coming from the drop-down box. And then so we're going to run this append row, which goes and gets our table that we've just set up, goes and get our rows. It does a resize on the, it calls resize, which we'll look at in a moment, just to resize the height of the static text container. We do an insert cell into the table. We align it, we set its background color, foreground color. We set the inner HTML to our selected text, which we passed in here, which is what we selected from the drop-down. And then we set up the button as well. So we've got two cells in our row. One contains the selected text from a drop-down. The other cell contains a button. So here's where we set that text align. So we've inserted another cell. Text aligns right. Background color is the same as our others. And there's our inner HTML setting up our button right there. So that's what we do when we insert. Now table resize is down here. So every time we add a row to the table, we want to resize our static text control. So we just grab the row's length and we pass in our table actually, and then we just grab the number of rows in there and then just size it appropriately. Now on delete row, when we click that button, you can see when we, let's just go back up here. You can see when we add the button in, we give it we add an all-click event called delete row, and that's right down here. So in delete row, we actually delete the row, we pass in the row. Now, because we delete a row, our the index that we add into the on-click event of delete row is all messed up. So now we just grab our rows again, and we just loop through those, changing the button now. We're actually adding in a new inner HTML into that cell, just setting up a new index for that delete row. And as you can see, it's really fast. It gets done very quickly. And then we just set up the input text. We add input text after we delete the row. We just add input text or our input box afterwards as well. And that's about it. Thanks for having a look.